Have you ever been caught in the middle of an argument that seemed impossible to resolve? Perhaps two colleagues at work refuse to cooperate, leaving you to wonder how a project will ever succeed. Or at home, a small disagreement with your partner over household responsibilities escalates into a larger tension, and you are unsure how to bring back harmony. Have you noticed how even minor conflicts can quietly drain our energy, affect our sleep, or make us second-guess our own decisions? We all face conflicts, sometimes small and fleeting, other times overwhelming and persistent. In such moments, it is natural to seek guidance from those who have faced greater storms. Perhaps Abraham Lincoln's wisdom can offer some answers. Lincoln, as many of us know, rose from humble beginnings, born in a log cabin in Kentucky, raised in poverty, largely self-taught, yet possessed of a profound curiosity and a relentless work ethic. He became a lawyer, then a congressman, and eventually the 16th President of the United States. His presidency coincided with the most turbulent period in American history. The nation was on the verge of civil war, divided along deep social, political, and economic lines. Lincoln faced personal tragedies, political rivalries, and a nation at war with itself, conflicts both immense and unrelenting. Yet throughout his life, from the courtroom disputes in Illinois to the highest stakes of the Civil War, Lincoln developed practical ways to navigate tension and disagreement, ways grounded in empathy, patience, humor, moral clarity, and strategic thinking. The lessons he left are not just for historians. They resonate with the challenges we face as in our own lives. Workplace disagreements, family conflicts, friendship tensions, and everyday miscommunications. 1. Start with empathy, seeing through the other person's eyes. Lincoln once said, "I don't like that man. I must get to know him better." In the period when Lincoln practiced law in Illinois, there was a particular case that stands out. He represented a client in a bitter property dispute, and the opposing lawyer was notorious for his arrogance and sharp tongue. Many would have bristled, refusing to negotiate or speak civilly. But Lincoln chose differently. One evening, he invited the lawyer to dinner. When friends asked him why he would socialize with someone who had been so difficult, he simply said, "I want to know what makes him so." That dinner did not turn them into friends, but it eased the tension enough that they could argue the case without letting personal animosity dominate. Lincoln's habit of seeking to understand those he disliked showed a deep commitment to empathy. He recognized that hostility often stems from pressures, fears, or misunderstandings, and that getting to know the person behind the opposition can shift the dynamics entirely. In our everyday lives, empathy can be just as transformative. It may not require a literal dinner. It could be taking a moment to consider what pressures a colleague faces or what experiences have shaped a family member's reaction. Approaching conflict with curiosity rather than judgment often opens a door that might otherwise remain firmly shut. Lincoln teaches us that understanding another person's perspective is a first step toward resolving disputes and building stronger relationships. 2. Stay calm in the face of anger. In the period following the Battle of Gettysburg, Lincoln faced both relief and frustration. The Union had achieved a major victory, yet he was furious that General George Meade did not pursue the retreating Confederate forces, missing an opportunity to shorten the war. In a surge of anger, Lincoln drafted a harsh letter criticizing Meade for what he saw as a failure of leadership. But instead of sending it immediately, Lincoln put the letter aside. He folded it, placed it in a drawer, and allowed himself time to cool. By the time he revisited the issue, his perspective had shifted, and he could address it calmly and constructively. This approach, writing a hot letter and delaying its delivery, was one of Lincoln's signature ways of managing anger. It allowed him to express his initial feelings privately, without damaging relationships or escalating conflict. Only after reflection would he communicate in a way that preserved both clarity and dignity. In daily life, the lesson is directly applicable. Heated emails, impulsive texts, or instant replies often carry more heat than insight. Taking time to cool off before responding can prevent temporary frustration from becoming a permanent rift. Lincoln's method reminds us that patience and reflection are as powerful as words themselves in diffusing anger and preserving dialogue. 3. Find common ground before differences. In the period of Lincoln's first inauguration, the nation was unraveling. 7 southern states had already seceded, and tensions were at a peak. Rather than focusing on division, Lincoln appealed to shared bonds, stating, "We are not enemies, but friends. We mustn't be enemies." He emphasized the mystic chords of memory that connected Americans despite their disagreements. Earlier in his law practice, Lincoln would often encourage clients to recognize what they agreed upon before addressing their conflicts. He noticed that acknowledging common interests, a shared desire for fairness, peace, or resolution, softened disputes and opened pathways to compromise. By starting with common ground, he created a platform where differences could be discussed without hostility. In modern life, we face similar dynamics, whether it is coworkers with clashing priorities, family members with conflicting schedules, or friends with divergent opinions. Identifying shared values or goals can prevent arguments from escalating. Lincoln's approach shows us that even in times of profound disagreement, there is usually some point of alignment that can serve as a starting place for resolution. 4. Tell stories instead of giving orders. In the period when Lincoln served as president, he frequently encountered situations where his advisors and generals disagreed sharply on strategy. One evening, a particularly heated cabinet debate arose over conflicting military reports. Tempers flared and progress stalled. Lincoln leaned back and recounted a story about a farmer whose horse kept escaping because the gate was left open. Each time, the farmer blamed the horse until a neighbor suggested, "Why not fix the gate?" The room laughed, and in that laughter, the lesson became clear. Focus on solving the problem, not assigning blame. By framing guidance as a story, Lincoln diffused tension while conveying his message persuasively. Sharing stories instead of issuing direct commands can be highly effective in our own conflicts. Stories create reflection rather than defensiveness, inviting others to consider perspectives they might otherwise resist. Lincoln shows us that stories are a subtle yet powerful tool for shifting discussions from confrontation to collaboration. 5. Compromise without losing principles. In the period when Lincoln's cabinet included Salmon P. Chase, the Treasury Secretary frequently challenged Lincoln, seeking to undermine him politically while still providing vital financial expertise. Chase's ambition and scheming could have provoked any leader to remove him immediately. But Lincoln chose to retain him, recognizing that his skills were indispensable to the Union's war effort. At the same time, Lincoln never wavered on the core principle of abolishing slavery, demonstrating that compromise has boundaries. By distinguishing between negotiable matters and fundamental values, he preserved both efficacy and integrity. Perhaps here we can feel a sense of balance. In our own conflicts, it can be useful to ask, which parts truly matter and which parts can be adjusted? Yielding where feasible may preserve relationships and opportunities, while standing firm on essential principles maintains character and direction. Lincoln's life suggests that flexibility and firmness are not opposites. They are complementary tools for navigating complex challenges. 6. Use humor to ease tension. In the period of Lincoln's presidency, political debates were often fierce. On one occasion, a critic mocked Lincoln's height and appearance, exclaiming, "You're two-faced." Lincoln smiled and responded, "Damn if I had another face. Do you think I'd wear this one?" Laughter followed, and the hostility in the room dissipated. Lincoln's use of humor was strategic, creating breathing space in tense situations and reminding people of their shared humanity. Humor allowed difficult conversations to proceed without escalating into personal attacks. In everyday interactions, humor can similarly shift the tone. A gentle joke, a self-deprecating comment, or light-hearted storytelling can reduce tension and invite collaboration. Lincoln demonstrates that humor, far from being trivial, is a practical tool for easing conflict and fostering connection. 7. Choose forgiveness over grudges. In the period of Lincoln's legal career, a newspaper editor published vicious criticism of him. Many expected Lincoln to respond aggressively, but instead, when he encountered the editor months later, he greeted him warmly. Lincoln explained, "I have no time to nurse grudges." Later, at the end of the Civil War, he extended this principle to the nation, urging reconciliation with the words, "With malice toward none, with charity for all." Forgiveness for Lincoln was not just moral, it was pragmatic, freeing energy for constructive action rather than resentment. In our own lives, letting go of grudges can prevent minor conflicts from growing into long-term bitterness. Forgiveness does not mean condoning harm. It means choosing a path that preserves our own peace and keeps relationships open. Lincoln's example encourages us to release the weight of resentment, creating space for understanding and collaboration. 8. Lead by example. During the period of the Civil War, Lincoln often visited wounded soldiers in hospitals late at night. He walked among them, shook their hands, and listened to their stories. There were no cameras, no reporters. He did this simply because he believed it mattered. He also admitted mistakes openly when military strategies failed, modeling honesty, humility, and patience. His conduct demonstrated the behavior he wanted others to follow, influencing generals, advisors, and the broader public. In our own conflicts, leading by example remains powerful. Showing respect, integrity, and patience often influences others more effectively than issuing directives. Lincoln teaches that leadership in resolving conflict begins with personal conduct. The behaviors we demonstrate set the tone for interactions around us. Lincoln's life was surrounded by conflict, from local disputes in Illinois to the seismic divisions of a nation at war. Yet in those storms, he cultivated habits that transformed confrontation into understanding, empathy before judgment, patience before reaction, humor before bitterness, and forgiveness before vengeance. What we learn from Lincoln is not abstract theory. It is practical wisdom, born of experience. He managed anger without harming relationships, sought common ground amidst division, told stories to enlighten rather than command, compromised without surrendering principles, and led by example. Our conflicts may not involve a nation divided by war, but the underlying dynamics are the same. At home, at work, with friends or strangers, the principles Lincoln practiced remain relevant. We can approach disagreements with curiosity, communicate with patience, soften tension with humor, and preserve relationships through forgiveness and respect. Perhaps the most enduring lesson is that peace is not given. It is built, moment by moment, through choice and action. The next time conflict arises in your life, remember the tall man from Illinois who carried a fractured nation, yet paused to listen, to laugh, and to forgive. His story reminds us that even in the midst of difficulty, understanding, compassion, and resolution are always within reach.